Welcome. Happy Monday to you. So as usual, let's start with our intention. Let's start with a drink of water, actually. So let's take a moment to be clear on our intention. And I'll invite you to just notice if you hopefully you can just be innocent in this. But if you find that there's a little bit of a you're overeducated, so maybe now you think you know what the right intention is and you want to force yourself to have the right intention, I'll invite you just to drop that and just be innocent about it. So we just have to start where we are. We can't start somewhere else. That hopefully makes sense. If we start where we're not, it's just going to be a disaster. The only way for there to be any kind of authentic revelation, we have to be truthful. So we have to just start where we are, not where we think we should be. So just notice, what is your intention? Just notice what that whatever that intention is, just innocent. So whatever that is, you maybe are aware of it in a positive sense or in a negative sense. So you might say, well, my intention is freedom. Or you might say, my intention is to be rid of pain. Or you might say, my intention is to be done with anxiety, or a million different possibilities or more, many possibilities. So just notice whatever that is. And then just notice whatever that intention is, whatever you desire either to attain or be rid of. Just imagine that you have succeeded. So it's just an exercise in imagination. Just imagine that you've succeeded in that. So now that's fulfilled. And notice when that's fulfilled, what will that give you? What will your experience be? Now you might answer that in one of two ways. So you might answer that in, if you really imagine, then you'd see, well, then I'd still have the same fundamental problem because it'd still be unfulfilled. But here, what I'm pointing to is something a little different than that. I'm saying just imagine that it's actually fulfilled. The way that you, in your innocence, imagine that it might be, not the way that we can see that it always works out, which is that we never find that fulfillment in the attainment of anything, but rather just in your innocence, play that out. And as you imagine that would actually be the actual fulfillment, notice how you would feel, what your experience would be. And just notice that is what you're really longing for. It's not the indirect means. The means are just means. They never actually work. But you can see, if you just play it out in your imagination, in your innocence, what you're hoping for. It's not the thing that you think. It's not the money or the wealth or the fame or the power or the health or avoidance of any of the things that you don't want, or the relationship to be working out the way you want. It's none of those things. Those are just means. What you actually want is this, that you can imagine in the fulfillment, the true fulfillment, not the way that it usually works out, where you just end up craving again or having more aversion, but actually in your innocence, the way you imagine it, that's what you long for, that real fulfillment, where you could say there's peace, there's contentment, there's joy. These are just words. So don't get hung up on the words, but just notice the experience. You can imagine it, even if it seems impossible to obtain, or even if it's vague, unclear, but you can still imagine it somehow. So just notice that. So two things to notice about it. One is, as I've said, that is what you really want, not the means. The means come and go. The health of the body comes and goes. The relationships come and go. People come and go. Money comes and goes. Security of the body comes and goes. Thoughts come and go. Intelligence comes and goes. All these things come and go. So all of those are means, but what they're really pointing to is this, what you really are longing for. So that's the first thing to notice. The second thing is to notice that this already exists. How do you know it already exists? Because you can imagine it. If it didn't exist, you couldn't imagine it. And you might say, well, that's foolish. I can imagine many things that don't exist. But just by imagining it, it does exist. It exists in imagination. Where does that come from? It comes because it already pre-exists. It already is there for you to recognize and tap into. So these are the two things to notice. One is that what your real intention, whether you've been aware of it or not, your real intention is for this fulfillment that's not a conditional fulfillment. It's not something that you're going to achieve in the future. It's not something that's going to come to pass because of some action or because of some conditions. Second thing to notice is that it already pre-exists. It exists already now. It is already the case. It's just that it's cluttered, covered over, obscured by all of the craving and aversion. Because I say, well, I need all of these things, all of these conditions have to be met before. And so I'm distracted looking everywhere else. But if you just notice, again, it's already here. You can imagine it. So that's the intention that I'm inviting you to notice. It's not an intention that has to be created. It's an intention. It's why you actually are here. I'm just pointing it out to you. Because all of the other things, like I've said, they come and go. They're unreliable. You can't really expect that if you put your faith in those things that you're going to be well taken care of, because they're transient. So the only thing that you really truly are longing for is that which is not transient. Nothing else will survive. Everything else disappears in an instant. And everything else carries with it its opposite anyway. So even if you say, I finally got it, I finally got that security, well, by its nature, it's a polarity. So it carries with it its opposite, which is insecurity. So you say, I've got the security, but then but now I'm worried that I'm going to lose it. So the only thing that will really satisfy is that which is not polarized, that which is not conditional, that which is not transient, and that which is already the case, what you already are. It's not, if it's something that you can obtain, it's something that can be lost. So that can't be it either. So I'm just pointing this out, whether you've been conscious of it or not. This is the real intention, has to be. So now we can explore that. Now I know, most likely, if you're here, which you are, then there's some doubt. So we want to look to see if we can clear up the doubts. So where can we find what it is that we're really looking for? Now, there are three possibilities. I think these cover them. Okay. First of all, we say, well, it's somewhere. I don't know where, it's somewhere out there. If I just keep looking for it, I'll find it. Another possibility is, this is the cynical view, it doesn't exist. Life consists of only misery. There is nothing else. Anything else is just a lie. If you look at it, most people fall into one of these traps, right? These are the two primary options that people consider. It's the way that most, whatever the person's religion is, whether they're Christian or Muslim or whatever the case may be, they tend to have this view, or if scientific rationalists, it's always in the future. It exists. We know it exists, whatever that is, whatever we call it, whether we call it the truth or we call it God or we call it anything else. We believe it exists, but it can only be discovered in the future. We're working toward it progressively. Second one is the view of the cynic. Doesn't exist. No such thing. Life just sucks. So most people fall into one of these two traps. And you can see neither one gives true happiness. Neither one offers fulfillment, because it's always either it doesn't exist or it's always out of reach. So this third possibility, what could that be? Third possibility, and you'll see exactly why most people instantly dismiss it, or it doesn't even occur to most people, is it's already the case. It's already here. It's already who you are. Now just notice, like I said, most people will dismiss this or will never even occur to them, because it's to the conditioned mind, which is conditioned in one of the first two ways. This third possibility seems impossible. There's so many arguments that the mind will come up with why this can't be so. So, but if that's so, then I wouldn't be unhappy. If that's so, then I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be searching. If that's so, then there would be no suffering. If that's so, on and on and on, all the reasons why not. But just notice what's happening there. Notice where the attention goes. The attention goes to all of the thoughts about it. So the mind is trying to grasp something, right? So the habitual attention is on the mind, and the mind is doing its one of its primary functions, which is outward grasping. And we've, in this culture or cultures, but I'd say there's a sort of dominant worldwide culture, or we call it a metaculture of materialistic rationalism, very objective, in pursuit of some kind of objective reality, objective truth. So this mind has been highly conditioned by this, and so its tendency due to this conditioning is it just keeps looking outward and grasping, and we get rewarded for that in most domains of our lives. That's how success is measured. That's in the mainstream. That's how you acquire things. That's how you show people how intelligent you are, because you can repeat back a lot of stuff. So this is a function of the mind, and it's the dominant function, at least in this metaculture. So we can notice that that's how we approach, just almost reflexively, everything. And that's how we approach even knowing who we are. And so when you say, well, of course I know who I am, and you look to see who are you? And the answers that the mind comes up with, just take a look right now. So everything here, just to be clear about this, all of this has to be experiential. So everything that I'm saying, you have to look for yourself. It's absolutely no value if you just take it in as more stuff to file away or compare to other things you think you know and judge that's right or it's not right. I agree or I don't agree. That's just more of the same that doesn't help. That's just more of that same grasping function of the mind. And then if you say, oh, I like this, I agree with this, this is good, now I've got some new good information, then all you've done is further reinforce this very same thing that is the cause of suffering. So I'm just pointing it out. So you look for yourself right now and notice, how do you know who you are? Everything that you can list off about yourself. Well, I know that I was born. I know that I had a childhood. I remember those things. I remember all these things that happened since then in my adult life. It's one thing. I know my name. I know my age. I know what size pants I wear. I know what size shoe I wear. I know my dietary preferences. I know my religious beliefs. I know my philosophical beliefs. I know my moral convictions. I know, all these things, all the things that you say that are you. It's just more knowledge, more facts, pieces of information that you filed away in the mind that can be recalled. Now, notice that so everything that you can list off or describe of yourself, all the evidence for knowing yourself, all of that is of this nature, being objective kinds of facts, information. But notice then, the you who you think you know is an object to you. You can think about it, you can see it, right? You can see the body, you can mentally see the memories. So you have all of this knowledge about yourself, but it's objective. So you're an object to yourself. Now, how does that make any sense? How can you be an object to yourself? So now just look to see that you, who you really are, and by really, I mean, because I, I say really because it's not an object. It's not changing. It's not transient. Is this which is aware of the object. So you are aware of the body. You're aware of the thoughts. You're aware of the memories. You're aware of all the knowledge. You're aware of everything that you can describe of yourself. So now just notice that that's not a thought. It's not an object. It's not a fact. You can't say anything about it. You could try. We have to try sometimes. We point at it with certain phrases, try to describe it, but none of that is it. Because this which is aware, this which is seeing, doesn't we can't really say anything of it. Now notice that because we can't say anything of it, it's a total mystery to the mind. Because the mind, at least to this outward grasping function of the mind, because that outward grasping function of the mind, all it can do anything with is objects. It has to be able to assign some kind of words to it. It has to be able to describe it. It has to be able to put it in a box. Say what it's like and what it's not like and what it's opposite to, and whether we like it or don't like it, and all of this stuff. It has to be able to do that in order for that to be knowable to the mind in this way that we're accustomed to. So if you notice the mind can start to get agitated if this is what's happening. If you keep trying to get hold of it, the mind starts to get agitated, and then it will it has its strategies. It will say, okay, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to figure it out. Or it will say, I'm just exhausted, I need a rest. Or it will say, this is a bunch of hooey. This is nonsense. I'm out of here. I don't need this kind of thing in my life. What a waste of time. I could be out achieving stuff, doing important things. So, these are the strategies, maybe the other variations, but these are some of the strategies at least. So whatever you notice of the mind, whatever state it's in, whether it's agitated or not hopeful or desperate, whatever the state is, just notice that you are aware of it. And you're aware of it effortlessly without having to label it, judge it, figure it out. All of that, those are just more functions of the grasping mind. But here you can notice but prior to all of that, there's just awareness of it. So now notice that hopefully this isn't likely to clear up all the doubts. But so we have to be honest and and sincere in this inquiry and not say, well, that didn't clear up all my doubts, so this is stupid. No, we just have to look at one doubt at a time. So just notice whatever you notice authentically about this. And then we can address the next doubts that come. But just first of all, just notice, are you aware? And is this awareness an object? So if the awareness is an object, then just notice, are you aware of that? What you're calling awareness that's an object. Just keep following that back and just keep noticing, because you can keep turning things into objects, but always behind that object, there's awareness of the object. And eventually you can just notice, well, there's just pure awareness that's not an object. The mind can't grasp it. The mind can't do that. So when you notice then that something happens to the mind. It's like, and don't take this too literally. Don't try to do it. Don't try to figure it out, but just observe. There's something that happens in the mind. It's some kind of shift from that function of that outward grasping function. Something shifts and there's a kind of inversion in which there's now it becomes quiescent, if only for just a moment. Doesn't have to last, because again, the mind is fickle. The mind is changing. So if we're looking to produce an eternal state in the mind, forget about it. That's just going to be miserable. So we don't need to be concerned about making the mind, forcing the mind to stay quiescent. The mind won't. But just for a moment, you catch a glimpse, maybe. And don't be concerned about the way I'm describing it. That's just one way of describing it. It doesn't need to be exactly like that, but just notice that it's like almost as if for just one moment at least, it's almost as if you're in deep sleep while awake, with eyes open or with eyes closed, but there's the mind becomes quiet just for a moment. So now if you notice just this one moment of a quiet mind. So if the mind is quiet, there are no objects, there's just this which we can't really describe. We can't put any words on it, but notice that can't be any doubt but what you exist. It's just that you don't exist in relationship to something else. You don't know that you exist because something is being reflected to you. Rather, you just simply have awareness of your own inherent existence without having to have that thought. But there can't be any doubt but what you exist, even though the mind becomes quiet. Okay, so hopefully that's clear to you, but just in case it's not, I don't want to leave anybody out. So just so that it can be, I didn't want to lead with this because I don't want you to mistake a method for the direct experience, because the direct experience is what's revealed. The method, to the degree that it is effective, helps to reveal that, but it's not the method. Okay, so hopefully you've had this glimpse without needing a particular method. It's just simply by looking. But in case it's not clear to you, then just for a moment, you can close the eyes and become aware of your breath. And let the breath be natural and relaxed, which means not mechanical. So a lot of the time we breathe mechanically, unconsciously, but here, by making the breath conscious, you can allow it to be truly natural. And in order to do that, just relax. So this is a method, so it's progressive. So don't expect that you're instantly completely relaxed. Rather, just relax into the relaxation. So progressively remain aware of the breath. So the breath is the thread, the through line in this, that you want to keep your attention with. So you're noticing the breath and you're just allowing the breath to be gentle, satisfying. And if it doesn't yet seem gentle or satisfying, don't dismay. Just know that that's the direction. So if it's not yet satisfying and gentle and relaxed, then just notice where you don't perceive that it's those things. Notice where there seems to be restriction, strain, or anything that seems to interfere with it just being relaxed and gentle and satisfying. And just notice that you can soften there. Don't strain to soften. That seems a little bit funny that anybody might do that, but you'll just notice it's a way that we often approach it, is we try to force the relaxation. Here, you have to be willing just to come slowly up to that point where you notice the strain or the unnecessary effort or the tension, and just very gently soften just as much as you can without force, and then continue to breathe gently, whether that means continuing to inhale or continuing to exhale, or switching from inhalation to exhalation or exhalation to inhalation. So just keep doing that for several more breaths. So letting the belly relax, letting the chest relax, letting the face be soft, letting the tongue be soft, and letting the shoulders also relax. So you can, maybe it will be a helpful image to imagine that you've got a comfortable blanket with some weight in it that's draped over the shoulders that just gently encourage the shoulders to release, so that you're not pulling the shoulders down, but rather you're just feeling that weight of that imagined blanket that's just gently encouraging the shoulders to release. And as you inhale, whenever you next inhale, just be aware that you don't lift the shoulders. That might seem unusual, an unusual experience, but just allow the shoulders to remain soft and relaxed. And when you reach the point in the inhalation where you feel that you must lift the shoulders, then just relax and don't lift the shoulders. And that might mean that you just don't inhale anymore. So the shape of the breath will change as you relax. The volume will change as you relax. So just keep letting the shoulders be relaxed, as if that weight of the blanket is helping to encourage them to release. And then hopefully you find that you experience greater ease, even though it might seem at first odd, might seem a little bit unsettling, but just notice that as you stay with it, that actually the body is more at ease. Just takes a moment to adjust to that. And continue to allow the shoulders to release, let the breath be gentle and relaxed, and let the face be soft and relax all the way into the interior of the skull, so that the whole head is thoroughly relaxed from the outside all the way to the center. And keep letting the breath become more and more gentle and relaxed. So it shouldn't be at all mechanical or forced. It should be very gentle, spontaneous. And then just let go completely. Just continue to rest and be very still and relaxed, particularly in the interior of the skull. Let the inside of the skull be very relaxed. And just notice then that perhaps you can notice that here the mind is still. And notice that you know that you exist without having to think it. You're just aware of yourself without any thought, without any memory, without any data, just awareness itself. So this experience, which hopefully everybody has now had a glimpse of, or multiple glimpses of, this is what we could call a very useful experience. But then what can happen is, well, the but something needs to be pointed out to be able to clearly recognize the essence of this experience, because there are still things about the experience that are conditional. So the mind becomes still. That's conditional. We know that that's so because sometimes the mind is not still. The body is relatively relaxed, so that's a condition. Not always the case. So we can just discard anything about this experience that is conditional. But what we want to recognize is what is not conditional about this. What is it that we can recognize in this experience that is always the case? And if you look carefully, you'll see that what you can recognize in this experience is this effortless awareness, the recognition that I am, without that referring to anything. So it's not I as an object am, but it's existence, pure existence itself. So now you've hopefully had this experience, and I'm pointing out something to you about the experience that I'm suggesting is essential. Everything else can be discarded because it's comes and goes. But notice that this, what I'm calling pure existence or pure awareness, that it's the foundation of everything. There's never anything that occurs of which this is not the foundation. So now, if you can recognize all this, so if you have the experience, you recognize what's being pointed to, then the doubt comes usually. Yeah, but what is this going to do for me? Because the moment I start thinking about it, I seem to be suffering still. The moment I think about it, I still have these problems. The moment I think about it, I still have pain. I still have discomfort. I still feel awkward. I still have guilt. I still have shame. Still don't have enough money. Still feel insecure. Whatever the problem, the long list of problems is. So this glimpse that you've had is relatively rare. Now, you might think, well, but it's so simple. All it took was just looking and having somebody point it out, and there it is. Why? Of course, it's everybody. Surely everybody has this. No, it's very rare. Very, very, very rare. So the fact that you even have had this experience already is very significant. Now, of the people who have this experience, I couldn't give you the exact statistics on it, but it's been my observation, it's been my own experience, and it's been my observation because I've been in these circles for a lot of my life. And so I've had a lot of chance to observe others who've had this recognition or this glimpse or this experience. And I've noticed that this doubt of, yeah, but how's that going to help me, is the one, it's the one that prolongs the suffering. And that it's very possible, if you recognize this, which is why I'm pointing it out, that this recognition of what I'm about to point out to you can save you a great deal of unnecessary prolonging of suffering or struggle. Here's the thing that I want to point out. Yeah, but what's it going to do for me? How is it going to help me? In one instant, you have this glimpse where you recognize what is essential when everything else vanishes. What remains is pure awareness, pure being. You just notice that this is so. You know, it's you. It's not something or someone else. It's you. This pure awareness, pure being is you. You know this is the case because it's all that is remain. It's all that remains, and you remain. You are not separate from it. So in one instant, there's this recognition, I am this. Just look to see that this is true in your own experience. Don't take my word for it. Look for yourself. So look and see. And if you're experienced enough with this glimpse now, then you can have this glimpse anytime. It's not hard. You know that. It's just like that. It's just to look. It's just to drop everything that's unnecessary, just to liberate all of everything for one instant. It's not hard, just one instant. And just notice in this one instant, what remains. And it can't be doubted. You remain. And you could say of this that what this is pure awareness or pure consciousness, but those are words. So it's beyond the words, but it's just you, without any concept, without any past, without any body, without any mind, without any baggage of any kind, just you, pure. So you can recognize that. Then in the next instant, this doubt comes up. Yeah, but what's this going to do for me? Notice what happens. It's not going to do anything for you because it is you. You are it. It is already free. You are already free. So this thought that says, well, what's it going to do for me, is appearing in you, to you. You remain unaffected. Notice. but it presents implicit in it, and it says, what's it going to do for me? It's saying it, me, two different things. What's it going to do for me? So the thought suggests, well, I am something other than what I am. And the one who I am now imagining that I am has all these problems. And what's it going to do for me? Nothing. The whole point is that, so, and we talked about this on Friday, I think, is that as soon as we buy into that thought, we're back on this wheel where we are unconsciously recycling and compounding the misery. Whereas when we recognize, as soon as that thought arises, if we just recognize, well, it's not going to do anything for me. I am it, and I am already free. Then, and assume that posture of freedom. Then what happens is, not only do we acknowledge and recognize our innate freedom and contentment, but we also are simultaneously, now this same wheel of suffering instantly transforms into the wheel of liberation, in which, to be clear, who you are cannot be liberated. There's no liberation needed for who you are. Who needs to be liberated? This creation of misery that you've created in ignorance. Just peer into it. It's filled with enslavement. So many things. I can't, he can't, she can't, they can't, nobody, all these things that are impossible. Oh, it's so overwhelming. The world sucks. So much misery, so much devastation, so much badness, so much wrongness. So you see, this is the world that we've created through our wrong use of imagination. All this limitation, suffering, misery that we've projected out there. And this recognition, I am already free, and then to assume that posture of freedom means now there's this conduit through which the light of pure consciousness enters unblemished into this creation to cleanse the creation of all of that distortion. Not because it's required for my freedom. My freedom is inherent, but it's in the recognition of my inherent freedom naturally. When I recognize my freedom, I'm not going to take a posture of, oh no, oh no, oh no. It's taking this posture of, oh no, doesn't in any way limit my inherent freedom. That freedom is already the case. That can be recognized in an instant like that. But every time I assume that posture of, oh no, life's so bad, I'm suffering, the world is suffering, everything's wrong, it's never going to be okay, I don't know any way out. That is the process of creation, or at least reinforcing the creation of suffering. Whereas by remaining with this recognition that I am inherently free, and then assuming a posture of that freedom, which means I'm free, I don't have any problem. So the posture of that is, and as we explored, I think in the Q&A on Friday, that if you say, well, I don't know how to take, I can't assume that posture because I'm just, oh, I'm so tense and uptight all the time. Not a problem. That's just, that's part of the creation that can be undone. That's not going to be undone by insisting, oh, I can't, I don't know, there's no way. The way that that's undone is keep noticing that which is already free. So you just keep taking a step back, take a step back, take a step back, as many steps back as is necessary before that posture naturally shines forth. The posture of that shines forth through this recognition of inherent freedom. So that might be very subtle. It might be so subtle that the body and mind are still tightly wound up. But at a very subtle level, there's this recognition, yes, but I'm free, regardless of that. It has to be a genuine recognition. But from that genuine recognition, there is a subtle posture of that freedom, that inherent freedom, in which none of the rest of this in any way harms this freedom. So this posture of freedom is that conduit in which the light enters into this creation, and the creation is illumined in a way in which even at the level of mind, it starts to become clear all of the delusion, that none of the things that I have believed are true, that none of those limitations are real, that all of the past, all of time is complete fabrication. There is nothing that binds anything. No binding is possible. It's like, how can you bind, you might have a movie projected on a screen, and in the projection on the screen, you see somebody being bound in a rope. But you are not bound. And the light shining through the projector is not bound, and the light hitting the screen is not bound, and the screen is not bound. And if you tried to bind the character who's already bound on the screen, you couldn't bind them because it's just a projection. So this is what I'm pointing at, is that even the mind becomes clearer through this process, because the mind starts to realize that all of this has only been just a mistaken perception, taken to be real. But it becomes clear that none of that is so. And so it has to begin at the source. It has to begin with the recognition of the source and the inherent freedom of the source, and that I am that. I am not what I've mistaken myself to be. What I've mistaken myself to be is a projection. And yes, at the level of the projection, there are many things that appear to be so, but at that level, no matter what I do trying to fix it, it only makes it worse. Because first has to be this recognition of the inherent freedom. And from that recognition of the inherent freedom, then that posture of freedom, openness, relaxation, ease, no problem is taken. And then that's the way in which that light shines forth into the projection, so that the projection is clarified. But we've just, out of habit, we've inverted that, and we've said, no, I've got to fix it at the level of the projection. It won't work. So I hope that this was clear. Tried to take it step by step systematically to give an experience and then point out things about the experience that will be helpful. Just again, as always, it's really only way it works is if you make it experiential. You have to look for yourself. You have to be willing to do that inquiry for yourself. So just listening is of minimal value, but you have to look at what's being pointed to. So we'll end it there for the formal portion today. And for those who are here live, we'll stay on for the Q&A if you'd like. So I'm going to end the recording now.